Thank you so much. Is this working? Yes? Thanks. It's wonderful to be in a church. It gives you authority. It's wonderful.
Well,
Hi.
I'm honored to be here in conversation. The last time I met Isabel was about 2 years ago when we had an event across the street at Politics and Prose, and it was the only time in my 5 years working there that we had to close the doors and turn people away, which was heartbreaking. I spent much of the evening trying to apologize to our customers. But it's just a testament to how passionate people are about Isabel, and tonight as well, because this is a sold-out event. So I wanted to start by talking about your new novel. If you haven't read it yet, I'm going to be mindful of not giving anything away. If I veer toward that, you can just kick me. But if you haven't read it yet, you're going to love this book. It's operating on so many different levels. It's a love story, it's a mystery, it's a wild road trip with a chihuahua and a body. I won't say more than that. But it's also, like all of your work, deeply political. And I wondered if you could talk about the character Evelyn at the center, who's an undocumented Guatemalan woman, and it feels almost like you anticipated the Trump administration as you were writing this.
Well, I started the book long before Trump was even a candidate. And then while I was writing the book and he became a candidate, it looked like a joke. I mean, I would never expected that he would be president, but the issues that are now so timely were there before. So he doesn't invent anything, he just picks up what is already there. And the plight of refugees and immigrants has been in the news for a long time. A couple of years ago, there were 68,000 minors that came mostly from Central America that crossed the border looking for their parents or trying to save their lives. And that became like a political crisis in a way, or a financial crisis of some kind, a legal crisis. And we fail to see that each one of those kids has a name, has a face, has a story. When we think numbers, we forget the human tragedy behind each one of them. No one leaves their home, their family, their language, their country, everything that is familiar, to go to another place where you will probably be received with hostility unless you are desperate. I keep bringing this up, but a few years ago there were no Syrian refugees. The Syrian refugees in Europe today is because of the crisis in Syria. The Central American refugees we have here is because of the crisis in their own countries, not because America looks so good. It's because they can't be where they were born. So those issues are in the book, and people keep bringing up the theme of immigration because it's so timely. But there are other things in the book that for me are timely, at least.
Yeah. Can you talk about those as well?
Well, the idea, when we talked a couple of years ago, I remember that we talked and I told you that I was going through a bad time. That
un año de mierda.
Yeah.
Forgive my accent.
Her accent is terrible, but
It is. I tried.
the idea of un año de mierda, it's a shitty year. And it was, actually. My marriage of 28 years was ending. I mean, and you know, a marriage doesn't end one day. It takes sometimes many years in which it deteriorates slowly. Plus, I was over 70, which is not fun. Everything goes down. And I'm also shrinking. Everybody's getting taller and younger. So my marriage was ending. My agent, beloved agent, Carmen Balcells, died. 3 of my best friends died. And my dog, Olivia, died. So it was like one of those long emotional winters. When I started this book, I stumbled upon a quote by Albert Camus that is beautiful. The quote says, In the midst of winter, I finally found within me an invincible summer. And the idea that we can go through these emotional winters and knowing that the invincible summer is always waiting under the surface, and if we give it a chance, it will emerge. So that's the story of this book. 3 people who are traumatized. They are living in a sort of winter. Each one of them handles their trauma differently. But they get together and they they go in an adventure and they find solidarity, compassion, friendship, love, and eventually the invincible summer, which I have found too, by the way.
Yes, and you have a love story in The Japanese Lover as well.
Yeah, in The Japanese Lover, the couple is in their 80s.
Right.
Now they are in their 60s. Yeah, it seems to be a theme, this thing about mature love. You might be wondering why.
And tell us how you got the idea for this book.
The idea sort of came, we were having brunch in a brownstone that we had rented in Brooklyn for the holidays of 2015. And then everybody asked, what are you going to write in a couple of weeks? Because I start all my books on January 8th. And I didn't have much of an idea, and everybody said, write about this, write about that, write about the brownstone, write about, this was the neighborhood of the mafia, and somebody mentioned that a schoolmate had found a body in the car of her father or something like that. That's great. I mean, everybody needs a body in a car. I mean, any writer needs a body in a car.
And a chihuahua.
So, yeah, of course, and a chihuahua. If you have a chihuahua, a deformed chihuahua and a body in a car, you have a book. You don't have to worry about the rest. The rest just comes. So by January 7th, I put together all the ideas that people had given me, and of course some of them did not resonate with me, but those that resonated, like mature love, like immigration, like the character of Lucia, who is similar to my own story, but mostly the story of a friend of mine in Chile, and Richard is like my brother. I mean, just as crazy as my brother. So I had all that, and with that I sort of created this story.
How did the January 8th date come to be? She begins all of her novels on January 8th.
Well, discipline, mostly. Now it's discipline. At the beginning it was superstition, because I had started my first book on January 8th, 1981, and so I started all my books on the same date for Kabbalah, for good luck, and they were lucky, all of them. So now I can't change it, because if I do, the book will be a flop. So now I keep it for superstition and discipline. I need to carve that time in my calendar.
And you began that book, The House of the Spirits, as a letter. Is that right, to your grandfather?
Yeah, it started like a letter to my grandfather, and it evolved into something that I didn't know what it was. It was like a creature that grew organically with tentacles. And at the end, I had a very dirty manuscript and no idea what it was. So the fact that it was published and it was successful paved the way for all my other books. And it was so lucky for me. It changed my life. It gave me a life, really.
I think there's almost certainly aspiring writers in the room who would be encouraged to hear that it wasn't easy to get that published.
No,
right?
It wasn't easy, and I was 40 years old. So you can get started anytime, anytime. Please don't write your memoirs at 19.
And you're still a big letter writer, is that?
I'm a letter writer because my mother is still alive. My mother is 97, my stepfather is 101. They are immortal. My mother has been, for the last 15 years, has wanted to be a widow. It's not working. So the idea of the body in the car, my mother loved it. Totally loved it. Where was I?
Writing to your mother. She edits
Oh,
your
yeah,
work, is that
my
right?
mother writes to me every day. Her brain is fine. it's a body that doesn't work. At 97, she's totally disabled, but her brain is wonderful and she uses all the technology. So she writes to me every single day and I write back. At the end of the year, I put all her letters and my letters in a plastic box. We have a storage room full of boxes, decades of boxes, and each box contains between 600 and 800 letters. So you can imagine, it's 2 lives in detail in those boxes.
And can you talk about magical realism? Do you still, when I was asking you if you had any, still in this current book, you said no, and yet I thought I saw at least one element of it. So is that in your writing DNA, do you think?
I think it's in my life DNA. Things happen that seem magical all the time, coincidences, prophetic dreams. The idea that I think of someone that I haven't thought of in years, and the phone rings, and it's that person. So that kind of stuff happens to me frequently. In this book, there is one scene that seems like magic realism, but it has an explanation. The girl, Evelyn Ortega, when she's still in Guatemala, she's brutally assaulted. And she loses her voice. She can't talk. And so her grandmother takes her to Petén, to a place in Guatemala where it's known because there are curanderos and shamans. And so she takes her to a curandera, and the woman gives her a tea, and the tea is ayahuasca, which is a drug. And the girl sees visions, and in the vision, she sees a female jaguar. Jaguar is the Mayan sacred animal. So it seems magical, everything that happens to her with this image of the totemic animal, the jaguar. But there's an explanation, there's a drug. You know, the difference between fantasy and magic realism is that fantasy, you never see anything, any effect, and you don't see it in life. For example, the invisibility cloak of Harry Potter, that's magic, and that's fantasy. But invisible Indians in the Amazon are a reality that seems magical, because they paint their bodies in the colors of nature, and they move so swiftly that they're invisible when they are 3 yards away. So the difference is that in every instance of magic realism, you can find an explanation. Garcia Marquez has a wonderful image about that. He says that when he wrote 100 Years of Solitude, he has a scene in which Remedios, La Bella, or one of her characters, I don't remember which, goes to heaven in body and soul. And it didn't work. He rewrote it several times, and it was just too unbelievable, until he had her hanging sheets. And then the wind comes and picks her up with the sheets, and she disappears in heaven. With the sheets is magic realism. Without the sheets is fantasy.
And you said it at a recent event, you had a woman come up to the microphone who almost could have been out of the pages of your novel.
Yes, we were in an event recently like this, and when the time came for the questions, a woman came over and she said, almost crying, she said, "I am Evelyn Ortega." And she said she was undocumented, she had read my books in prison. It was so touching. I mean, those are the moments when the whole trip, the whole book tour has meaning for me, because I realize that people read with their heart.
I wanted to ask you about translation. Do you worry about translation?
No, I don't worry about anything anymore.
When did you stop worrying?
No, nothing worries me anymore. And translation can't worry me because I don't have much control. I can only read the translation into English, but the book is translated into 35 languages. I have no idea what they translate. I trust that the translators usually improve my books. So in English, I have had excellent translators always. And sometimes the irony or the humor is lost. I think it's lost. but it's not that it's lost, it's that you cannot translate it. What works in Spanish might not work in English. What is funny for me might be politically incorrect for you, even offensive for you. So Chilean humor is very much like Jewish humor, very dark and cruel, and self-deprecating. It doesn't work in the United States. You are really boring people with this thing about the politically correct. How can you be funny politically correct? It's impossible.
Are you beyond the point of needing to run your ideas past an editor or friends? Do you just get your idea and write the book, or?
I don't share the process because I don't know where the process is leading me. But for the first time now, I'm working with an editor that can read Spanish in the United States. Because before, my editor couldn't read Spanish, so by the time she bought the book, it was already published in several languages. She couldn't change anything. But now with Johanna Castillo, we can talk about the book and move things around and do something with it. And I think she really helped me a lot. The process is very interesting because I never know where the book is going. I never know how the characters will surprise me. And by the time I finish the book, I am surprised. Sometimes I have an idea of how the book will finish, and I get up fascinated that day because I'm going to finish my book. And then I open the computer and I realize that it ended the day before. There is nothing I can add or subtract.
I heard you say once that you got a lot of your ideas from newspaper clippings. I think it
was in Venezuela.
Venezuela.
But here with this politically correctness thing, what ideas can you get?
Right.
Well, now with Trump, you get a lot.
Right, that was my question.
Now you get a lot.
Yes, that was my question.
Well, yeah, we have an ongoing circus.
Yeah. Can you tell people about your foundation?
Well, my daughter Paula died in 1992. And, she was 28 years old. Her premature death broke my heart. And as an homage to her, years later, I created a foundation, and the mission of the foundation is empowerment of women and girls, or women and children. And I've been working with the foundation for many years, but when my daughter-in-law, Lori Barra, came to the family, by the way, that was an arranged marriage. My son was divorced with 3 babies in diapers, and I was looking for a bride that would cope with 3 kids and could run my foundation as well. So it was a complicated choice. But I found her, and Lori's sitting there. She's the boss in the family, raised the kids, and has run the foundation for 18 years. And the foundation is supported by my income, but there is one person here that I want to acknowledge, and that is Adais Marves. I don't fundraise, I don't ask for money, but without asking, there is one person that has supported the foundation for I don't know how many years. She came to this country as an undocumented immigrant from Venezuela. She worked as a nanny at the beginning, and from her paycheck, she would send $100 every month, and her bonus at the end of the year. Now she has a daycare, and she's still contributing every month to the foundation. Adais, can you get up? So, thank you. Thank you. We have a scholarship in her name. Oh, by the way, it's through the foundation that I got to meet people like Evelyn Ortega in the book. Unfortunately, I didn't have to make it up. There's a part in the book in which Evelyn is interrogated by an immigration officer. And she tells, more or less, stammering, tells her story. And the officer says, well, you will have to tell this to the judge. If they have heard the same story many, many times, some judges believe it and some don't. The idea that many judges have heard the story many times is not because it's a lie, it's because it's so common that it becomes trite.
And both of the other characters in the new novel have very harrowing pasts as well. Did you have to do much research for this book?
No, no research. Well, I researched little things, but the story from Guatemala, I had a lot of information, and I have a friend who has written books about this, and she directs the Center for Latin American Studies in UC Berkeley, Beatriz Mans, and she gave me the information about the genocide in the 80s in Guatemala. They killed or displaced 2,000, ¿cómo se dice en inglés? I can never say numbers in English. Lori, well, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. 100,000 by 2? 200 plus 50? Well, that's what it is. Yeah. That's what it is. People displaced and assassinated in the most horrible ways in Guatemala. And by the way, with the support and intervention of the CIA. So she researched all that. She was there. She saw it with her own eyes, and she wrote books about it. So she helped me with that part. And then the story of Lucia that happens in the 70s in Chile with the military coup. I didn't have to research it. I lived it. And I was a political refugee because I had to leave my country at the time. So her story somehow reflects part of my story, but it's also the story of thousands of other people in Chile and many of my friends. I didn't have to invent that either. And the character of Richard, I had two models for the character. I always try to find someone in real life that will be the model. And in this case, it's a lovely friend called Carter and my brother Juan. My brother is vegan, he has 4 cats, he's single, he's totally weird. So he's just perfect for a character in a book. You know, it's interesting, my stepfather, the guy who is 101 and should be dead, he says, why am I not a character in your books? Well, because he has common sense. People with common sense don't make good characters for books. They make good former spouses.
Well, presumably because of your own personal history, all of your books have characters with these very difficult pasts, or you're researching a moment in history.
But Susan, what are you going to write about someone who nothing happens in that life?
Yes, no,
if you are safe, if you have a common sense life, you cannot write about that. You choose people who have interesting stories. You go for the tragedy and the comedy.
But also you have so much history too, which is what makes your books so rich. The Japanese lover with, you learn a lot from reading your books as well. So.
When I have a character, I always think, let's say that the character, like in the Japanese lover, is 80 years old. What happened in the 80 years of that person? In the case of the Japanese lover, for that couple, the most important thing was the war. The Second World War. She's Jewish, so that would have affected her. And he's Japanese. He was in the internment camps in the United States. So it's the war that allows me to create the story. Without the war, if nothing happened in those lives, you don't have a story.
I'm going to open it up to questions in just a few minutes so you can start preparing your thoughts. I wanted to ask you, as you're touring so extensively, does anything unexpected ever happen anymore, or have you seen it all now?
I don't know. I move every day to a new city, a new hotel. I don't know, where are we right now? I have no idea which town this is. or when I was in Boston or in Chicago, I have no idea. By the end of the tour with Lori, usually we end up in intensive care because it's just very confusing.
But nothing memorable happens at events, something kind of crazy,
Everything
meet
is
people.
memorable. A gathering like this is memorable.
Yeah.
But you guys, you look exactly like the audience from last night. And exactly like the audience of tomorrow. So,
Well, we'll try not to make it too memorable then. Well, all right. Well, why don't we turn it over to your questions?
yes,
If-
you have
can
to walk
come
to the microphone, unfortunately. You can line up in front of the microphone.
Yo ya leí el libro y cuando lo estaba leyendo, I wrote the book already, and when I was reading the lady, I thought it was you.
Lucia.
Lucia, it was you. I don't know why, many things that happen in your life. Yo pensé que tú eras una de las protagonistas. No eras, pero yo lo pensé.
Gracias.
Y quiero pedirle un favor. Cuando yo leo un libro, cierro los ojos y me imagino. Yo quiero cerrar mis ojos y que me digas en dónde estabas cuando tú empezaste a escribir La Casa de los Espíritus.
Okay, I will translate that. That she likes to imagine, close her eyes and imagine where I was when I started writing The House of the Spirits. I was living in an apartment in Caracas, and I wrote in the kitchen at night because I worked in a school 12 hours a day. I would come home, feed the family, have a shower, and then I would work in the kitchen, on the kitchen counter. So the manuscript of The House of the Spirits had all kinds of stains, soup, tomato sauce, everything. It was a very dirty manuscript. There were no computers and no way that you could have a clean, perfect manuscript. That was impossible. So thank you very much.
Thank you to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome to just line up at the mic
you can
if
come
have
to the
questions.
microphone. And let's make the questions short so that we can have a lot of questions. Yeah.
It's an honor to be here. I'm
Thank
from
you.
Chile too.
Gracias.
My question is, I don't want to ask you are thinking to retire, but what is your plan? Are you coming back to Chile someday?
I'm not planning to retire at all. I'm planning to change my life, actually. I have fallen in love at 75. Yeah, I know. People keep asking, how is it to fall in love at 75? As if I was already in hospice or something. And I say it's exactly the same as falling in love at 17, but with a sense of urgency. No time to waste. Yeah, because how long do I have for this love? 5 years? Maybe 10 years before he becomes demented? And it won't happen to me with a mother at 97 that is brilliant and a stepfather that doesn't die. I will live a long life and probably with my marbles.
Please take him to Chile.
And I have a foot in Chile always. I go all the time. But my family is here. And now with Roger here, I don't think I will end up in Chile. I don't think I can transport him to Chile. He doesn't speak a word of Spanish, which is a good thing in a way.
Okay. Thank you so much.
It's a very good thing.
Will you tell us anything more about that? About falling in
About-
love, or
what
where
about-
you met, or?
Am I allowed to tell it? I don't think so because his daughter is here.
Oh.
And she would be horrified. But it was very romantic. He's Polish. He pursued me for 5 months. Yeah, I'm lucky because I didn't have a chance otherwise. If I went into Match.com or Tinder or any of those things, what would I post? Short, bossy Latin American grandmother looking for a partner? Forget it. Would I get anybody interested? Of course not. But now if I meet the guy, I grab him by the neck or whatever other part of him is available, And he doesn't have a chance, as Roger can testify. Okay, what's your question? Sorry for the interruption.
No worries. Thank you. It's an incredible honor to have you here tonight. I just want to first thank you for the work of your foundation. I work for an organization called Search for Common Ground, and you supported a project that my team has been running in Nepal, where there's a group of women now who are using Maithili art to transform the role of women in their community, and it's directly because of you. So thank you for that. I'm sure the foundation is doing extraordinary work, and whoever Lori is. And Michael support. I want to, I'm interested, I want to change the tone a little bit. I want to hear a little bit about your perspective of what's happening in this country. Having lived through a society descending into authoritarianism and having to flee from that. And, you hear all the time fears, are we going toward an authoritarian world in the United States? I'd love to hear your views on that. Thank you.
As I was mentioning, we all as individuals go sooner or later in life through some winters that can be very long. For me, the longest and darkest winter was after my daughter died, of course, when she was sick and when she died. But I have had other winters in my life. In the same way, I think that nations, countries, peoples, humanity goes through times of darkness and times of long winters. For example, the Second World War and many other times. But in my 75 years, I have seen that the pendulum goes back and forth, but the tendency is toward evolution, toward a more progressive society, more inclusive, more diverse. We are not going back. And I think that right now, many people in this country are very scared. And also, the country is so polarized that we don't talk to each other anymore. If someone is on the other side of the spectrum, we don't talk. We ignore the fact that they are living with us in the same territory. In my experience, this will pass. And we will have learned a lot from this experience. I'm not happy with what's going on in this country, but I doubt that it will end up in a dictatorship like Chile. The institutions are pretty strong in this country, and maybe they will withstand this assault that we have now. And we'll see. Under the surface, there are always forces that move, that we fail to see sometimes. We fail to see the forces that elected Trump. And we are failing to see also the forces that are now trying to somehow balance what is happening. I remember when we had the dictatorship in Chile, 17 years, there were no political parties allowed, no Congress, no free press, no judiciary system. Everything was controlled by the military. And then Pinochet, who wanted to be in the history books as a legal president, he organized a plebiscite. And in the plebiscite, you could only vote yes or no. No was for no, we don't want Pinochet. That would be the opposition. And yes, we want Pinochet. They controlled everything. They had all the money and all the media. And yet, they lost the plebiscite. Because during 17 years, these forces had been working without being organized in political parties, and we won. And Pinochet was gone. So I do believe that what's happening today will be a big lesson for this country, but we will come out of it. There is an invincible summer.
Doña Isabel, un placer verte, escucharte. I have been reading your work since the beginning, first in English, now I can read it in Spanish.
Thank you.
And I was going to ask you, how do you go on? But I think you've told me, so it was worth the price of the ticket.
Thank
Gracias.
you very much. Thank you.
Hi. I read your book, El Cuaderno de Maya, and I loved the interracial relationship between the grandma and El Popo. And I loved the relationship, and I love the character of El Popo, and I wanted to know, what did you base that character on? And if you can tell me more how you created that character.
Yeah, Popo in the book is an African-American grandfather. That he's the stepfather of the girl, step-grandfather. And they have this incredible love relationship, the granddaughter and the grandfather, to the point that when Popo dies, Maya's life falls to pieces. And then the whole story of her going into drugs and everything else happens because of Popo's death. Popo is the grandfather that I would have liked to have. I had a wonderful grandfather, but he was a severe Basque who taught me the essential things that have carried me through life. Don't complain. Don't ask for anything. You're responsible for yourself. Service, honor, decency, work. God, you need all that at the beginning. But now, at my age, I wish I could put all that aside. I want to complain. Of course I want to complain, and I don't want to be honorable anymore. I'm done with that. But it's ingrained there. So I created that Popo that is all love, and he's all mushy. He's a teddy bear. That's what I would have liked to have.
Wonderful, thank you.
I was wondering, with all the letters that you've saved between you and your mother, do you think you'll ever turn that into a book?
My mother's letters will never be turned into a book. We have an agreement that whoever dies first, the other person burns the letters. Because we are, I can't tell you the kind of stuff that we write in those letters. And with the people we name, with their name and, yeah. No. The stuff that my mother writes about my stepfather, forget it. And that I have written about a lot of people in my life, we can't.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was worth asking.
Hello. I just wanted to say, one, it's such a big honor to be able to ask you a question.
Thank you.
I was exposed to your work in high school by one of my Spanish teachers, Señora Quintanar, and ever since then, I've just been a really big fan. I know that we've talked a lot about the United States and a lot of the issues that are occurring here, but I think that this is also applied to an international level. And I wanted to know your opinion on how you use literature as a medium to kind of create empathy, and how we can further establish empathy on a more global scale to kind of understand individuals throughout different forms of adversity, whether it might be immigration or, there's such a big multitude of what can be going on. So I'd love to know your opinion.
Yeah, I don't use my books my books don't have a purpose or a message. I'm not trying to preach anything because I don't know anything. I have questions, I don't have answers. But the whole point of literature, since the beginning of the history of the written word, is to connect people. When you tell a story, like the story of Evelyn in the book, is the story of one person. And the reader can relate to that story, to that human story. And maybe that might change the image that reader has of an immigrant. And the next time he sees or she sees an immigrant, will have a different perspective because he has read one particular story. And I think that's the whole purpose of literature. But if you try to preach, then you ruin it. It doesn't work. If you can find something between the lines, it's fine. And now you're asking about the world. How can we have a world that is more compassionate, more inclusive? That's your job. The job of the young people who have inherited this mess. You have to clean up.
All right, thank you so much.
Hola Isabel, esta noche se cumple uno de mis sueños, el verte. Cuando yo tenía 15 años, mi madre quedó en silla de ruedas en un accidente de vehículo.
Can you say that in English or no? I'll translate
yes,
if you want. She says that when she was 15, her mother had a car accident and entered in a wheelchair.
Yes, and hasta ahora todavía está en silla de ruedas. Me tocó cuidarla en el hospital, psicólogos, personas religiosas para tratarle de subir los ánimos. Hubo una persona que le regaló tu libro de Paula y le sirvió, le levantó el espíritu. Y estoy aquí para darte las gracias porque eso le ayudó tanto a mi madre. Y quiero preguntar...
Déjame traducir eso. She says that her mother was very depressed, that there were doctors and psychiatrists and religious people trying to help her. And then somebody gave her my book, Paula, and that helped her. Thank you.
Y ahí empezó a luchar. Y yo te quiero preguntar a ti, ¿cómo te sientes tú de hacer la diferencia en la vida de las personas, incluso aunque tú no las conozcas?
And how do I feel about making a difference in people's lives, even if I don't know them? Well, that's the ripple effect of everything we do in life. Not only me, what you do, what every one of us does. We don't know the ripple effect. We don't know how we touch other people and how we can serve other people and how we can offend or hurt other people. We have to walk in life very carefully. And I'm honored that your mother found some respite in one of my books. When I wrote Paula, at the beginning I didn't want to publish the book, but eventually it was published. And it is, of all my books, the one that has the greatest response of the readers. 25 years later, I get letters every week from someone who has read the book before and something happens now, and that's why they write to me, or they just discovered the book, or there's someone that in the family or a friend that has a loss and they want to send the book with a signature. So in a way, we all have losses, and the fact that that book can touch people is wonderful for me. It's as if Paula's spirit was there in the world, touching people. Thank you.
Gracias.
Buenas noches, Isabel. Me da un gusto enorme el poder conocerte y me da más alegría saber que mi hija de 14 años pudo venir conmigo. A mis 3 niños he podido compartir los libros que tú sacaste para jóvenes.
Can you say all that in English, no?
Can you help me?
Yeah. Can I help you? Yes, I can help you. She's thanking for the books, and she says her kids have read the young adult books that I wrote. They're not very good.
I love it, because para mis hijos la lectura en español ha sido un poco difícil, pero esos fueron mucho más fáciles. Y una pregunta, ¿cómo haces para mantenerte tan bien, luces súper bien, y mantener esa memoria tan vivaz? Y una pregunta más, ¿cuál es tu opinión acerca de los estudiantes de DACA, Dreamers?
Yeah. Now I'm lost. She says, how do I keep myself so good?
Yeah.
A lot of money. It takes a lot of money.
Great.
And what do I think about the DACA kids? Of course they should be given a status so that they can stay in this country. Who can doubt that? It's incredible.
Thank you.
Buenas noches, yo me llamo Micaela, soy de Bolivia. So I grew up in Bolivia, and in my life I never thought I would see you, and I never thought it would be in the United States of all places. So this ties into, I just want to appreciate so much this book where you're telling all the different stories of the Latin American experiences in the migration as well. And I read your book, and I didn't share with my friends. I was just reading all by myself really quickly. My question, and usually with friends, I compare what was your favorite part, and we laugh or we cry. And I wonder if you have any particular parts of this last book that you particularly like a lot, or that made you laugh as you wrote it. What was some of these reflections?
Well, in this book, what I like most is the love story. Of course, I do like to have a corpse, as I said, any writer would. It's funny because when I have a body in the trunk of a car in a blizzard. So the body is frozen. Thank God, because that gives me like 3 days before the body defrosts. And in these 3 days, I have to dispose of the body. So I emailed all my friends and acquaintances. Everybody answered with some way of getting rid of a body. Everybody. And I concluded that almost everybody in the world wants to kill someone. And they have already imagined how they are going to do the perfect crime. And usually it's a member of the family that they want to kill. But what I liked writing in this book is the relationship between Lucia and Richard. Lucia is romantic. She's 62 years old. She looks at herself in the mirror and she doesn't have a waist anymore. She sees her wrinkles. There is a description of her when she looks at herself in the mirror. And later there is a description of her in which she looks completely different because she's seen through the eyes of Richard. And the subtle way in which she falls in love with him and he's trying not to fall in love with her but does, that's what I liked the most. And I was tempted to write a sex scene, a good one, but my mother is still alive. So I have to be very subtle.
Muchas gracias.
Huh?
Gracias.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Bea. I'm from Italy. I read some of your books, not this one yet, but each time they take me on a journey, so it's a gift, each one of them, so I look forward to reading this one. I wanted to know a little bit more about your writing process. I remember once perusing a website of yours and talked about certain rituals in the morning, and you mentioned that you start them on January 8th, and then that the first one you wrote at the kitchen table and it had stains. Just a little bit more about the writing process and how it has evolved. Thank you.
Well, the writing process is simple. I just sit every day in front of the computer early in the morning because I'm better in the morning. And I write and research for months until I have a first draft. I try not to have any social life, not to travel unless I have to go to see my parents. And just concentrate on the book. I write only one project at a time. I can't be distracted with writing anything else. Sometimes people ask me to write, for example, an essay for something. If I'm writing a book, I can't. I'm all completely focused on what I'm doing. And there is no mystery, it's just work. And the joy of it. Yes.
Hi, so
somehow the five
Hello?
people have multiplied. It's very interesting. You see, that's magical realism. Yeah.
I'm so happy to meet you in person. I'm very excited to be here. I'm Peruvian, where you really...
Is there any American in this room? Like 3. Yeah.
My husband.
And your husband. Everybody seems to be. Okay.
So I'm delightful to have you in front of me. I really love your books. My favorite is Aphrodita. I'm very involved into the culinary world in Peru, and that really inspired me to get more deeper into that. Thank you for that. And also, number 2 is that in Peru, we are empowering the women. Right now, it's like a whole evolution. The women really need a message. There's so much to do there and everywhere. I think in Peru, just a few years ago, we are really working hard and empower women and having respect them. And I would like to if you can give us any message for all the women that are like really empowered.
Well, as I said before, I don't have messages. Okay. But the empowerment of women comes from the roots. It's not something that someone from abroad or from above or from can say. In Chile, we have very strong women's movements that have been working. Chile is a very backward country in many ways. It was one of the last countries in the world to have divorce. We have been fighting for an abortion law because it's the most draconian laws in the world. I mean, abortion is never allowed in any circumstance, not even if the life of the mother is in danger or even if the fetus is not viable outside the uterus. No way. So the empowerment of women comes from the organizations in the country. And there's nothing that I can say that they are not doing. They are doing it already.
That's true. Thank you.
Sorry, my English is horrible, so I need to ask in Spanish. 3 cosas. La primera, quería darle las gracias porque sus libros han sido mis compañeros durante estos 2 años, desde que estoy aquí en Estados Unidos. y digamos que he encontrado mis experiencias o las cosas que he vivido que pueden ser tan...
Déjalo cortito porque no alcanzo a traducir.
Sorry. He encontrado mis experiencias en sus libros, como en este que usted dice que ella recordaba que podía reírse en español estando en Chile todavía. La segunda, quiero darle las gracias porque escribí a su organización para pedir un libro autografiado para mi papá, a quien no veo hace 2 años. Me llegó.
Yeah, so she says that she wrote to our office to ask for a book for her father, and we sent it. Don't get any ideas, okay?
Sorry.
That's not going to happen. It was an exception.
Okay. Y the last one es, usted habla en este libro acerca de justicia natural, ¿no? Como nosotros aquí en Estados Unidos.
Hablo de la justicia natural.
Cómo buscar la justicia natural. No sé si nos puede ampliar un poco más y hacer.
She talks about, at the end of the book, there's a whole thing about natural justice. The idea is that the law usually favors the wealthy, the powerful, and the weak and the poor are never protected by the law, or very seldom. And the characters in the book at one point decide to do something that is maybe not lawful. They are not expecting justice, official justice, but there is balance in the world. And I do believe that there is a sort of organic justice. If you do wrong, you pay. If you do good, sooner or later you will be rewarded. And if you are not rewarded in the eyes of everybody, there is that wonderful feeling inside, that warm feeling that you have done good. And that's a wonderful reward also. So I do believe that there is that kind of balance. And in my books, I find that fascinating. Because I hear stories about that, and I have them. The first time that I've had a story like that, I don't remember the name of the story, but it's in the stories of Eva Luna. I didn't make it up. This happened in Venezuela. In Venezuela, mangoes are everywhere. It's a wild plant like weed. So in rural areas, you can pick up a mango in the street and eat it. I mean, no one will charge you for that. And the story, this happened in Venezuela. In some place, there was a guy who was not Venezuelan. He was a foreigner, and he had mangoes in his property. And a little boy came in and picked up a mango, and he shot him. He wanted to scare him, but he missed, and he shot him and killed him. And it was an accident. No one could prove that he had intended to kill him. He would have gone free, and he does go free. But then the whole village gets together and picks up mangoes. And they come, everybody comes with bags and bags of mangoes, and they fill up the house with mangoes that start to rot in the heat of the tropical weather. And it's like a marmalade of mango, and the guy can never come back. And the property is forever banned. I mean, no one goes there. It's just flies and rats and rotten mangoes. To me, that story was the first time that I thought, this is what I want to write about. People in charge of organic, natural justice. Redemption in a way.
Thank you.
Okay, first of all, it's a real privilege to have with you here because we are waiting for you for a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a book club. All of us is here.
Oh, that's the book club.
Yeah.
Hi. You are the only male in the book club?
Yeah.
There's another one over there.
2 guys.
Yeah, 2 guys.
We read several of your books, and yes, it has been a very good experience for us. You mentioned about the work as a writer, but I'd like to know a little more in details. How did you get your inspiration? Because if you are researching about any issue, of course you have a lot of information. But how did you get the way that you write? You have a special methodology or a system as a writer?
Well, every book has a way of being told. And what I could use for one book I cannot use for another. The formula of the House of the Spirits that was so successful, I never was able to repeat it. Not because I don't know how to do it, but because every story has its own tone, its rhythm, its needs, I would say. And that is the most difficult part for me. The first few weeks when I'm trying to find the narrative voice, when I'm trying to get into the story, when I don't see the characters clearly, when I don't know where the story is going, that's a very confusing and hard time. I have learned with years of experience to relax and let it be. Because sooner or later, it will happen if I show up to work every day. Before I tried to force things, to create a story in my mind, and write it no matter what, and then it wouldn't work. Now that I relax, it happens. You know, it's like making love. You cannot do it with a manual and instructions and a script. You improvise a little and maybe it will work.
Thank you very much.
Especially at my age, you have to improvise.
Good evening, how are you? I don't have a questions, but I would like to tell you thank you very much for writing us. I was in immigration. I am from Guatemala. And inmigración es un gran proceso y durante ese proceso, con sus libros, obtuve inspiración, valor y pude soñar especialmente con la hija de la fortuna. Muchas gracias.
He says that he went through all the process of immigration that was very complicated. He's from Guatemala, and that my books helped him to go through that, especially Daughter of Fortune. Gracias, muchas gracias. Okay, thank you everybody, thank you.